Now he's showing up at Atlanta, and now we're getting into our first game of the decider match. In the top right of Data C for Kaizi Gaming, he is Spirit.
And over in the southwestern corner, playing as the blue Protoss for Team Liquid, it is MaNa. Both looking very cool and calm so far. You know, you don't see any of those on-stage jitters. And MaNa, he's been around for a long time, despite being fairly young to say he's been around since the Brood War, and already a little bit of cheeky shenanigans going on from Spirit.
I don't think this would be that surprising. Spirit's very well known as a macro player, perhaps even a little bit passive at times in general in his gameplay, but maybe more so in the other matchups now. In PvT, he's been mixing it up with every other Terran out there, so a lot of factory expands, a lot of proxies. In this case, it is going to be that singular proxy, which MaNa is absolutely looking out for. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information about their previous series. I don't believe it was cast. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I missed it. But that probably has a lot to do with their most recent series, but also, I'm sure, a little bit with whatever matches they have been playing online against each other.
Yeah, I mean, TVP is a whole different ballgame these days. You do see this double gas opening being far more relevant these days. It allows the Terran to deal with a lot of the proxy shenanigans that can go on from the proxy gateway. I know Zaun's very good at that kind of stuff, but oh wow. Okay, this is starting to turn to a way bigger committal than I thought it was going to be. But you're totally right. That scouting pattern of MaNa shows that he wanted to see something potentially on the way, not going for the most direct course of action. And here, a factory reactor. The Marine goes back home to deal with the probe. This is a spicy opening.
Yes, it is, and one that Spirit has been doing, I feel like, somewhat frequently. I know it's kind of weird to say that proxying a factory in the middle of the map might be frequent, but I'm not going to throw any stats around. Basically, he's done it more than once, guys, in the last couple of months. This can turn into a couple of different things, just straight up proxy, like Widowmine, proxy Hellion, and then I don't think he's done the Thor Rush afterwards, but I know we always throw that out. I think he might have once, because I feel like y'all kept doing it, and then eventually he did it. But it is going to be that swap onto the reactor, far more expected result.
Yeah, and look at that Zealot pathing from MaNa. He's totally aware that, okay, a Marine came back home. That means you're absolutely committing to more than you think you would. And that Zealot, very smart by MaNa to know this. He didn't keep the Zealot at home because he knew that it wasn't a Reaper. And already this has thrown a spanner in the works of Spirit. Yeah,
to deny that starport and potentially the reactor. I mean, 2 Widowmines for 2 units. It'd have to require a little bit of footwork, but MaNa, well, I guess, you know what? It's not that MaNa couldn't do it, perhaps. It's more that, yeah, is there more to be done with these 2 units than just trying to run around the Widowmines? Now, he does lose track of them, would be the reason not to do what MaNa is doing, but the reason to do what MaNa is doing is to apply that pressure to someone you know doesn't have production back at home.
That was sneaky and cute by Spirit. He hit the SCV. He actually brought it out very early, realizing that he's probably going to lose it. But this is kind of scary. Like, knocking on your front door, you've got one Marine that is actually just going to fall immediately.
Yeah.
MaNa's already getting himself into a very good location in this game.
Yes, and he even takes out the Widowmine that was sent back to help out there. The Widowmine offense turning into defense is always tricky on the Terran side, but especially when you've actually, you're now up against 3 units, right? So they're not going to one-shot the Widowmine, but basically they're going to demolish SCVs. Still not that much faster, actually. 2 Stalkers still going to 2-shot, but they're going to demolish a supply depot a little bit faster with the help of that Zealot, and that's exactly what happens. And they can continue running away from the Widowmines, force Spirit to micro back at home as opposed to on the offense. And MaNa basically just micros over here while keeping an eye on his main base every so often. But otherwise, it can focus on here.
Oh, this is a disaster for Spirit, an absolute disaster. I mean, the armory's going to finish, which means that these Widowmines are cloaked. And I mean, it's only a Robo coming out. It's going to be a Phoenix follow-up as well. If MaNa can keep a hold of this and just keep on harassing, even killing that fresh mule, MaNa's playing really good.
Yeah, MaNa has just... The thing is, it might seem kind of obvious. Already found the starport. He knew what was going on. How does this not turn out this way? But plenty of Protoss have tried to be aggressive in this option, thinking that it's like a golden ticket, and they failed. They've missed microed or something like that. But we do have a little bit of damage finally happening on the other side of the map as well. MaNa's Phoenix not able to stop the Widowmines from actually getting some shots off, but will be able to tear down the medevac. Yeah, presumably so. But is that going to cost him any lives back at home? Is he mistiming this Widowmine? So far, no. Okay, yeah, he's actually being a little extra cautious for it.
I mean, I thought MaNa was holding everything fine, but those 2 Widowmines getting in there, despite the 2 Phoenix being there, that was messy. And now, Widowmines, okay, getting 1. That is actually quite a saving grace, because all the damage that MaNa did, I feel that Spirit did such a good job of kind of equaling it out a little bit.
Yeah, it was a lot about him making sure those Widow Mines didn't get close without him being aware, and then that happened. He actually just missed the timing a little bit to be able to pull away accurately while microing on the other side of the map, and that's always the risk. You were just hoping that you'd be able to stop that. And instead, we do have what could be the start of a snowball effect. Now, keep in mind, while there's a 6 worker difference that isn't that good in TVP usually, that's usually accounting for 2 mules.
Yeah.
So Spirit was really all in with this.
He absolutely was, but...
No, God. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Oh, very nicely done by MaNa. That could have been absolutely game clinching, but with that defense there, he's still killing probes somewhere. I mean, it has to be Widow Mines doing it, right? 5 probes do fall. That count is getting a little bit closer. Does he have enough energy? Okay, he has enough, but still, this is kind of unnecessary damage. You can feel this is a very hectic game to start things off.
Yeah, and that's what happens with Widow Mines so often. Even though you might know they're on the way, you might know how many, you might know even which direction. If there's enough of them and you kind of lose track and they get into 2 different locations, so your observer has to run around, then it can snowball. It takes just 1 second to really lose a lot of probes, or 1 second and then another second and another second before things have equalized. And that's kind of more so where we're headed. Spirit has yet to actually gain, I think, a big enough advantage for his opener, considering that MaNa does have production, technology, and 2 Nexus that are chrono boosting and producing double probe.
It's kind of funny, like he walled off between the natural and the main, but that kind of makes it harder to transfer probes when he needs to.
Yeah.
And what's he going to kill it with at this point? Probably warping in a Zealot for just that reason. But yeah, this already, MaNa's done a lot of damage. This Phoenix count is scary. He knows the committal from Spirit is to continually go for the Widow Mines as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just realizes, hey, my opponent's on 1 base, keep these bad boys back at home, and just defend from this point on. You can see that Thor coming out, Zombie Grub, and he's full on 1 basing here, and MaNa sees everything.
I knew he did it eventually one time, because we had talked about it, and then it finally happened, and he is once again doing it here. It's nice because even though it might become expected, again, one of those things where like, well, they know about it, isn't it, you know, the scouting's there, how aren't they just going to deal with it? Not exactly. It's still kind of tricky because you are going for the great anti-Widow Mine option that is Phoenix, but I wouldn't call Phoenix great anti-Thor option because they literally can't pick up the Thor. They can't do anything against it.
How do you kill this, actually? This is starting to become really scary because
I don't know.
All the units he's been making, like the 2 Stalkers, they get absolutely owned by the Thor. There's a few Marines with this. The Widow Mines could come in real damn clutch as well at dealing with just anything else in the field, like a probe surround or anything like that.
Yeah, I actually think that MaNa wasn't anticipating this follow-up, which is really too bad, because otherwise he would have probably thrown out an Immortal, gotten 2 shield batteries in the front line, and then also tried to pick those reinforcing units off with the Phoenix whenever possible, although also keeping in mind he had to stay at home and deal with the Widow Mines. So this is already a bit too big of a surprise for MaNa to hold this low ground. Obviously he's given up on it. He's going to try and hold the high ground, but is the reaction too late?
Okay. Does take out a medevac, does take out one of the Widow Mines as well, but this Thor army is going to keep on growing. Loses that Nexus, and that 43 probe count that he has, that is a massively oversaturated main. He's down to just, what was that, 5 mineral patches there, so mining out at the same time. This is tragic.
Yeah, and it's still a question as to whether he can actually defeat the army. With the mass repair, Thor's plural at this point, by the way, guys, 2 of them are actually going to do a lot of damage without necessarily dying. We have further committal to the 1 base, which MaNa this time around is getting a full scout up. Not that it's not pretty obvious with Thor's being produced, but just that extra check. It is continuing to be committed. Try and get that harassment when you can. The good news is that Phoenix, while they can't pick up Thors, they can't do damage to them, they can at least kind of survive some of the attacks, as seen there. And again, try and do some of that harassment before the real push comes to shove.
Yeah, MaNa needs to try and get down that ramp and secure his natural. Like, he absolutely needs to. Like, that main is going to be mining out very soon. And if you try and fight this sieged up Terran army that's going to have tanks in the midst soon, it's actually going to be ridiculously hard. I love the addition of Vikings as well instead of the medevacs. Just trying to deal with this Phoenix count, because those tanks can remain on the ground. Like, that Immortal army won't be able to last that long against it.
Yeah. Immortals, I mean, really designed as an anti-mech unit. The dynamic's a little more complicated than that. It really is. Usually the Immortals are there buffered by a lot of Protoss units. Protoss kind of becomes, you know, the faster building race in a lot of TVPs that have mech. But I'm talking about macro mech, all right? With this cheese opening and 1 base versus 1 base, it's obviously a lot more complicated. They both are working on very few units and fewer minerals as time goes on. But Spirit now has that tank to siege up, already blast the Immortal shields off, and will just continue to siege hop forward and start to tear down some of these production facilities, which is a very big deal.
I love the addition of the engineering bay, by the way. Like, if he can start putting up some aggressive turrets here aggressively, which is exactly what he's going for, MaNa's doing a good job of picking off the reinforcements, because no way can he engage this army. The thing is, time is on Spirit's side, but that is a great fight to take, I think, for MaNa. Takes out the siege tank immediately, and now we can actually hold on.
That's the big difference. If he had misjudged if he could reach that siege tank or it wasn't in that place to begin with, MaNa might have made a huge mistake. But instead actually taking down one of the very important units, and then the other one reinforcing was taken out by the Phoenix. This is the start of being able to break out, but things once again are complicated. You know, Spirit actually is going to try to expand out of this. Now, we got to, I mean, like, how do we even actually cast this, right? It's so difficult to do. MaNa might have more harassment opportunities with the SCVs while the Thors are out and about, but then the Thors will eventually come back. But then Thors don't necessarily add that much the longer the game goes on, if it goes on to 2 or 3 bases. But that is yet to be seen, of course. We could still have a second, or third, or fourth fall lane, I don't know what to call it at this point, from Spirit.
Yeah, like, this is definitely gnarly. Like, it's a very uncomfortable situation for both of them. MaNa has to respect the army completely. Does he expand now? Even if he does, he kind of has to go for a double expand to use all those probes, but I think he's just going to play it safe, realizing, hey, I'm dealing a lot of damage. You can't have units everywhere. You know, you've got this small, slow army. I'm going to keep on dealing economic damage. I'm going to keep on seeing what economic situation you're in. And those Phoenix have been huge value for money.
Yes, they have. Absolutely. I think MaNa, for the most part, has used them about as accurately as possible, because, of course, he's always in the dark for a lot of these things. So the only thing really is that time that maybe he could have seen the Thor follow-up faster and he didn't. It would be the only time I think that his Phoenix weren't in the right place at the right time. But now they've constantly been active, pulling back, killing reinforcements, going around, killing those SCVs, and keeping MaNa informed and in the game economically, of course, as his natural nexus still not yet done. 43 probes don't really tell that tale.
No, absolutely not. And the 24 SCVs, like, the supplies are a little bit deceiving. Getting up this second, okay, I love that third base by MaNa, because he has so many probes. Right now, that main base has got to be close to mined out at this point. It's looking pretty dire, but, getting out a Dark Shrine. I like that a lot. Spirit is going to be committing a lot to the mules because he feels that he's economically behind. Cancels it, goes for the Robo Bay. You know what?
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting for sure. Maybe he's like, you know what, I killed a factory, that limits the amount of tanks that you can potentially have. A disruptor against everything that you've got on the field, no stim, just Thors. That could be cool as well.
Yeah, actually, again, going to very, very far into the future that probably won't exist in this game, a late game mech versus Protoss army. A lot of the times you do need those disruptors out and start conquering the Thors, or the tanks, actually, if you're talking about air. You can't just go air against Thors, so on and so forth. The point is, disruptors, actually pretty good against mech. To go so quickly into disruptors and still what is effectively, I guess, like an early to mid-game PvT, that's where it is like, okay, is this the right decision? And I think MaNa is also flying by the seat of his pants. Obviously, you cancel the Dark Shrine in exchange for this, right? But it might just be the right move here. I think a Dark Shrine also would have been great, but you got to pick and choose when you're still in a low economy.
Yeah, and I think he was like, you know what, this is already a low eco game where my opponent's kind of hunkering down on 2 bases. What can I actually get done with DTs? They're much better where the Terran's more spread out, right? But I think MaNa's doing everything right at this point. I like the way he's playing. I'm now looking at it from Spirit's perspective. I'm like, how does he, A, deal damage, B, get out from this situation? Because he's not going to have good upgrades for a long period of time. And like, he's going into bio now, but this is going to be one of the latest stims you've ever seen.
That is really weird.
It is really weird.
That is going to be so weird. No. I think I actually 100%, I didn't say it, but I absolutely believed it, so I'm going to tell myself here. I thought he was going to go for a 2-base all-in.
Yeah.
I thought he was just going to go, like, you know what? All-in didn't work the first time, do it the 5th and 6th time. Good old, like, Protoss mentality usually. But no, he is going to try and play a macro game out of this, and I just don't know if that is actually possible with how late all the things that make your army actually good, stim, combat chills, and medevacs, are going to be compared to MaNa, who has chosen correctly with that faster third nexus. He's gotten over that hump of being broke and is now working on the more of a typical 3-base Protoss line.
Yeah, and those disruptors are scary, man. Like, when you see those pop out and it's like, yeah, my army's pretty damn slow. Like, the Thors, you talked about it, they become far more redundant in this matchup.
Yeah.
The Immortals can deal good damage. Once Zealots are out with charge, they're very decent against them as well. And yeah, Spirit's just got to be content with the fact that he's stuck on these 2 bases. He's got the 3rd CC, but look at the supplies now. Like, MaNa's getting ready to take a 4th base because he is kind of long distance mining at this moment in time. Yeah, he's holding all the cards here.
Right, MaNa's got that map control. So he's tracking any army move outs, including this attempted Viking flyby, I guess it would be called. Well, eventually he'll take care of that, I suppose. But it's unlikely to do a whole lot of damage. He's moving on to further advancement of his army. Does still have to be careful, as the Immortals by their lonesome might not stack up to the current army that you see. And kind of case in point right now. But if he can track it, then hopefully he can go ahead and continue putting pressure on it however he can, and then be prepared if it does come across the map, which it's not even really doing. He's just setting up for a third CC.
This might have looked like kind of extreme from Spirit. The fact that he flew the Vikings out the top and lost a few of them, flew the Raven down at the bottom, lost it, but it bought him time to distract this army, distract the units, so we could actually move out. Because if MaNa had everything waiting at the bottom of that ramp, no way could Spirit have broke out. But now the time is like, okay, Spirit, what do you have to hold this? Because MaNa's getting ready for a big hug of doom over here.
I actually really like this. A lot of Protoss would be hesitant to do so, especially without a War Prism, but he just goes on in here. He realizes he has got this one, and he goes ahead and gets that GG. MaNa winning a very interesting game number one. I feel like he's showing not just his veterancy, I suppose, but also that is him as a player, right? He actually does well in these wacky situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember a long time ago, and this is during the kind of map pool of Romanticide, like where Spirit didn't like TVP, and he had to go up against Showtime in a best of 5. It ended up donking Showtime like 3-1. I remember but it was with these ridiculously crazy one-base all-in kind of stuff. And he was very good at it. And you got to see that even though he got shut down so hard by the Zealot early on, the Phoenix and what have you, he still managed to wriggle his way in and just be so persistent about constant Widowmine drops and stuff. So I got to give Spirit quite a bit of credit there. He turned that into a game which kind of shouldn't have been, because at one point I was actually worried for MaNa just having Phoenix against a Thor all-in.
Right, yeah. No, that was definitely the most worrisome part. And getting yourself out of that tricky one-base contain situation is also really dangerous. In fact, I think if Spirit had not put his tank into a snipeable position, we're either talking about a potential game over within 8 minutes, or we're talking about MaNa being the unfavored one as it went into a macro game. But it was snipeable, and that really, Spirit had to say, like, yeah, I guess I can't do this. I have no tanks, and I'm losing out on the amount of units I have versus you. So he backed away, gave MaNa a lot of flexibility.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Like, maybe in Spirit's, because after he denied the natural, like he killed the natural, MaNa's on one base and it's barely one base. Maybe it would have been like, all right, let's make sure I don't get my reinforcements picked up. The Phoenix are back home picking off my SCVs. That's all well and good. I don't really need them, right? Like I'm on one base and he just managed to get a second tank out there. That could have been a really big deal. But MaNa, he was so annoying with his Phoenix. He did a really good job of just kind of finding out where Spirit's army was, which isn't easy. And he always brought the Phoenix back to pick off the good reinforcements. And yeah, very well played by MaNa in game one.
Absolutely. And now this man is down one game in the bottom left of Inside and Out. He is Spirit.
After losing the last 15 or so series up until today in a row, MaNa currently 1-0 up. In fact, ruined it already. Spawning in the top right, it is MaNa. I still think that's absolutely incredible. The fact that it's been so one-sided between them recently that today, this day, MaNa's absolutely bringing it against Spirit.
You know, I kind of pushed a little bit of the narrative in some of my videos and conversations about this tournament. You know, the NA hype, right? The NA home turf. And at one point, I was looking through the list of players and I noticed MaNa, and I was like, you know what? He kind of gets it too. Not because he's North American, guys, but because his best performance, I feel like, of the last, I don't know how many years, 6+ years, was that Austin performance where he got to the finals. So, of course, I think he just does generally better offline. I think he's been very much hungry his entire career as well. So even when he faces setbacks, such as his regional performance, he doesn't get discouraged for very long anyways. I guess everyone does, but for very long, doesn't contemplate retirement, just continues to say, like, you know what, I actually know I'm good. I know my practice will eventually shine through. And that confidence, I think, really shows in an offline tournament, which, well, as I'm saying this and building MaNa up, he loses his first probe. That happens.
It does happen, and it was before a Reaper popped out or anything like that. It will be a Marine opening, and a far different opening this game. It wasn't the double gas from the Terran. It was the just one barracks CC with a Reaper first. This is, I don't want to say as greedy as it gets because it isn't a CC first, but when it comes to TVP, this is about as greedy as it gets. There's no SCP scout either from him, and he's just going to wander around with this Marine, make sure that there isn't a second gateway on the field, because that could really shut down what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a very different game, this one.
Yeah, MaNa absolutely the type to go for a proxy gateway, and it feels like they're fairly popular on this map too. I absolutely envisioned exactly where that pylon would be when his Marine was shooting for, but yeah, no pylon. They both are playing a little bit more of a macro game, but that will change as we get up on this 2 base, I would assume, actually. I think MaNa's going to apply a little bit of pressure. I don't know about a 4-gate entirely with Blink, but 3-gate with actually some dedicated warp-ins could definitely happen. MaNa typically known more so for aggression and wanting to feel, of course, in control of the game as well.
Yeah, this probe that's coming out with this adept, this makes me think that MaNa is going to be a little bit like, hey, let's set up some proxy on the map, but maybe just a pylon. It could be with a gateway as well. Don't know just yet, but the fact that he's coming to scout with the adept, he obviously lost the probe, getting to see this, and it's like, hey, no Reaper, 3 Marines, that means he made 1, and then the reactor, obviously. So he's actually hunkering down for a game where it's like, okay, I'm not going to be under harass or duress for quite some time. I'm going to be the one that gets to set the tempo.
Ooh, 3cc. Ooh, if this is a 4-gate from MaNa, he's going to have a pretty open opportunity to do some damage. Not a guaranteed victory, not exactly a build order victory, but can be if your first strike is very good. But that still remains to be seen. MaNa, yeah, I mean, with the proxy pylon, absolutely going to be aggressive. Got to assume that's a 4th gateway. Or the 3rd one, and the 4th one goes at home, either one. But let's see if Spirit can scout this. That Hellion going to see in the main base, maybe notice what there isn't, more so. But it is tricky. It is going to be tricky. The whole point of that proxy gateway, taking a little bit of information away from your opponent, and of course giving you the faster reinforcements. It's a total of 3 gateways. I think it is.
Yeah, it's not the biggest committal, right? But the fact that he doesn't need the robo with it, it's probably going to hit a lot faster.
Exactly.
It's got to be said, like, Spirit scouts with this Hellion, does a decent job of kind of figuring out, hey, it's Stalkers, I'm not going to be up against a Stargate kind of thing, and he did produce a Cyclone first, but that just shows how blind he was with his build and how greedy it's been, but at least he didn't go for anything like Widow Mines, because if he went for a Widow Mine drop while being against a lot of Stalkers, because he went for a very fast tank follow-up as well, he's kind of getting away with this.
This is interesting, right? I feel like if MaNa had put all out aggression on the field, he would have had an opening, but this is kind of middling, you know? It's tricky. It's absolutely tricky, but it might not be a good type of tricky against kind of like a, like I'll stand up straight here and I'll just do what I want. The Stalker's walking in definitely changes a little bit of it, and I'm actually going to get access to that main base. A couple of Stalkers will lose their lives. Oh, leave just one actually. But yeah, MaNa still doesn't have the full tail after that scout, or does he?
Like, he got to see the tank and the Cyclone on high ground. Obviously, he's getting shot by the Cyclone, but he goes straight into charge afterwards. That was weird, right? Because he obviously blinked in there. It's like, hey, there's an open invitation here. That could obviously get you thinking, like, okay, what's going on behind this? Did he actually get to see that 3rd CC on the high ground? That's my big question.
That's what I was at. Yeah, okay, he did. All right. Yeah, I think there's other signs that it would have been a 3rd CC, just how, like, defensive it is, how there's been little aggression otherwise, like that type of thing. But, you know, seeing this 3rd CC straight up is pretty nice. So as I was saying, I feel like Spirit just kind of being able to do his greedy build order compared to MaNa, who's kind of like throwing in tricks. The tricks don't really matter, is potentially problematic. But at least MaNa now knows what's up, so he can, I guess, change his path as well, which seems to be going into that charge. He went to 4 gases. I thought it might be going into a faster Templar Archives, but not so much. Not yet anyways. This is 3rd base still yet to be saturated. No gases there. His robo only just now finishing right. He did forego that with his opener.
Yeah, no obvious lead for either one of these just yet. Both of them just kind of testing the waters. This Cyclone, it's a little bit of a redundant unit at this point. Can do a little bit of poking and prodding, but as you see, quite brittle indeed. Charge will be finishing up very soon for MaNa. He's pumping out quite a few more gateways and going for that fairly early robo with this as well. I mean, right now, this is a game where I don't think either one can kill the other for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's just about what does MaNa want to do? And he's going to go for a 4th base, so absolutely going to play it out a little bit. And I like that move from him because he saw the 3rd base early enough and his build was lenient enough to say, hey, even if you did go for an early 3rd, I'm not behind in that regard anyway.
Right, that was my worry, was that MaNa is kind of saying, oh no, that's what he's doing. Okay, hold on here, let me change my mind, let me change my perspective. And then he's now worried, oh, I didn't know for so long. What if he pushes me? I gotta, you know, be on 3 bases. I gotta play it safe. I think if he had done that, that actually would have been quite bad. But going for this 4th base as is shows a confident MaNa. And, well, I think we're going to actually get a pretty good macro game because of it. So Spirit got away with his third CC, what he wanted to do. He's in his zone for sure. Yes, he's been playing around with proxies and more cheesy openers, but I still think this is where he, maybe, I don't know if he loves to play, I haven't talked to him personally, but he plays it a lot, so he's pretty good at it.
Oh yeah, he absolutely is. Like, he'll love to get into that ghost stage of the game where he's got a very, very solid army. You see here that he hasn't done a full committal to the tank number, it's just two safety tanks, and that's a great number by him to go for. In fact, 5 tanks? Holy crap. Okay, I'm starting to think that he might try and do some 1-1 timing push with this, because tanks, they aren't the kind of unit that is really good in the late game. We've seen Maru do it where he's like, you know what, I'll keep making tanks, I'll start turtling it down, but the fact that he's going for his Coast Academy, the 1-1's finishing up now, maybe it's going to be one of those, hey, let's get out a few ghosts and let's just see what we can do with it. Oh, he's going for starports as well.
Yeah, so I actually wonder if your idea would have been better, of course, but we'll never know. We'll never know. But I saw, like, the armory coming down too, and I was like, if you're going to really commit to 1-1 and really try to punch it, maybe you wouldn't bother with the armory quite yet, because delaying an armory is not exactly uncommon in this matchup. But then the second starport comes down, I think it kind of confirms more to the very, very macro. And the 4th CC is almost done, right? So it is Spirit just playing that turtle Terran that we know he can play. This is now MaNa having to shift gears as well and trying to combat that potentially very late game Spirits, which I don't know if that's where MaNa really likes to shine.
It might not be, but his probe count says otherwise. Like, he's geared up for this, and he's been very smart, because I was worried about this push, whereas he's just like, you know what, 90 probes, let's do it. He's got his second Forge on the go as well. He's absolutely called what Spirit was going for this game, and he's responded exceptionally well, which makes me think that MaNa absolutely came into this group knowing his opponent far better than he's done in the past.
That seems to be the case,
yeah.
Right? Like, I think that's something that is, I guess it wasn't stated until you just said it, but MaNa, having lost all these series against him up until today, you would assume that means he just can't get a handle on a guy. All right, that's a lot of games to still lose if, that's the main problem. But today, he absolutely seems to be, like, peering into Spirit's soul. Anyways, and it's saying exactly, like, I know what you're going to do here. I know how you're going to play this out. And I know exactly what to do with the time that you kind of give me as well with the way you're playing.
Yeah, and those tanks, they're good for now, given that, that army is very... If the Colossus are out of it, then it's like, all right, you're just against gateway units, you got the Ghost with that too. You're going to have pretty decent upgrades, but I'm looking at this. There is a massive window where MaNa can lay on the assault, and depending on what he does with his Warp Prism, it's going to be very hard for Spirit to hold on here. Oh, he's actually just going for the orbital.
Wow, yeah, I don't think Spirit was necessarily expecting that. Now responding, but the force fields are going to keep that bio away from the Stalkers at the very least. The Zealots do AI into them, but the force fields also kind of force the bio up against a certain point of them, and the Colossus just went to town. Lots of damage done on the bio. Now MaNa is going to go for it. It doesn't look like it's actually going to be possible, underestimating perhaps how many reinforcements there were still available for Spirit, but he has committed, and now Spirit thinks that he can jump on top of him, but he has to jump on top, grabs one of the Colossus, and now is working on those Stalkers. They don't hold up very long against the bio, but that is the question, which one's going to hold out longer? And right now, with the reinforcements, it looks like MaNa is going to hold out, take control of Spirit's third base, and give himself a humongous lead in the game.
Look at MaNa's economy. He just finished up a good another 4 gateways as well. I wonder what number he's on, but he's getting 3-2 upgrades. He's even getting air upgrades as well. He's ready for not this stage of the game, but the next one. And he's so rich behind this. 92 probes versus 67. And he's still got money to spare, and he's denied the third base of his opponent. He is looking damn good in this game.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he could potentially overcommit. He could say, I'm really going to win this, and he's going to move into really bad tank shots and Sim City, and that could absolutely still happen. But if he plays this out basically with some wisdom here, I think he can do it. Or maybe he can just A-move and punch it. He blinks forward once again. He is making a statement right now, as he might just be on the verge of taking another series off of Spirit. MaNa rushing into the natural at this point. Still got his Warp Prism, still got his 2 Colossus, and Spirit is trying to repair a bunker. That's how desperate he is. Not going to work out. And MaNa, with the 2-0, has truly broken the Spirit curse.
I am so impressed by MaNa. There was some moments in that game where I'm like, Spirit, I think he's going to do this. This is really scary for MaNa. And MaNa, he knew better than I did, and he wasn't seeing the whole picture. But that just showed me that he absolutely clued into the way that Spirit was playing the game, and he played it really damn smart. Game 1, very higgledy-piggledy, very weird to get a hold of, but I think he dealt with all the chaos very well.